Welcome in on a Monday. I'm Reed Cowan. So two big breaking news stories. First, a jury has acquitted Daniel Penny in the chokehold death of Jordan Neely. Plus, developing news in that nationwide manhunt for the killer of UnitedHealthcare CEO. Police say they have a person of interest in questioning as we speak. You're watching CBS News 24/7. So when we see it, you see it. Let's get right to that breaking news off the top. The manhunt for the suspect that killed the CEO of UnitedHealthcare, Brian Thompson. CBS News confirming police in Altoona, Pennsylvania, have a person of interest in for questioning. Now, also this is coming as we get breaking news that the New York City Police Department has announced a news conference for 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time in New York City at City Hall. What will they say? What could it be in relation to that questioning happening in Pennsylvania? We do not know. If these walls could talk, a lot might be forecast into what you will hear during this broadcast at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You're looking live outside that police station in Altoona, Pennsylvania, where that person of interest is inside for questioning. CBS News senior coordinating producer and crime of public safety unit Anna Schechter is here with more on that breaking news. So for our viewers, let's just start building blocks one at a time. First of all, what's the difference between a person of interest and a suspect?
Well, a person of interest is someone that police want to question in relation to a crime, connected to a crime. A suspect is someone that they've determined committed the crime. And so, you know, we've seen a little bit of discrepancy. The FBI put out a flyer over the weekend calling him an unknown suspect. And now the sources that we are talking to are getting more and more confident that the man that they are questioning now in Altoona, Pennsylvania, is in fact the suspect, is the person who carried out the crime. There are a lot of clues. The fact that he was in possession of a gun with a silencer. They are checking to see if it was in fact the murder weapon. He was in possession of multiple fake IDs, including a fake New Jersey driver's license. And we know from our prior reporting that the person of interest who was wanted for questioning in connection to the murder, the person who you saw in those photos check into the hostel on the Upper West Side in Manhattan, he checked in using a fake New Jersey ID. So police are becoming more confident. NYPD is likely already in Altoona, if not almost there. This came in via a tip from a local McDonald's. Somebody in the McDonald's saw him and said, hey, that looks like the guy, and called local Altoona police. So it was a tip from the public that led to the questioning that is now underway at that Altoona Police Department that you just showed the viewers. Reed?
It really punctuates the power of getting these images like the one we're seeing right there on the screen out, because people do watch, they do see, and they do call in those tips. So let's play this out. Let's say that this is confirmed as being the suspect in the killing of Mr. Thompson there in New York, the UnitedHealthcare CEO. What happens after that questioning in Altoona, Pennsylvania? What's the process to get him into New York?
Well, he will actually have to make an appearance in Altoona. And what investigators have to do is lay out a timeline why they believe that he is the person. That leads to a warrant for an arrest and an arrest. And then that will pave the way for a transfer from Altoona police custody to NYPD custody, because this is an NYPD-led investigation that is a multi-state investigation. The U.S. Marshals are involved, so the fugitive task force that's comprised of Marshals and NYPD, they will be in charge of transporting him back to New York City to face charges in New York City for carrying out this murder in cold blood.
So let's talk about what led up to this questioning of this person of interest. And if you're just now joining CBS News 24/7, just to get you caught up, a person of interest has been taken into custody carrying a firearm that looks a lot like the firearm that we saw on that surveillance video, carrying a fake ID, which of course we know figures into this case. But let's play this out. It looks like this guy planned this and planned it very meticulously and had some expertise in planning. But at the same time, it's almost a double-edged sword, is it not? That meticulous, but New York City police were able to connect dot after dot after dot that seems to follow his planning.
That's right. And the surveillance footage has been key. So the fact that there are so many cameras, people have been asking, how is it that this guy could have gotten away with all the cameras? Well, what the cameras do is they capture the footage so that investigators then later can recover it and review it. And it takes time. They've reviewed thousands of hours of surveillance footage. And so they were able to piece together a map of exactly what he did once he exited that Port Authority bus terminal on the night of November 24th at 10 p.m. He cased the area around the Hilton Hotel where he carried out the attack, and then went up and checked into a youth hostel on the Upper West Side. 10 days later, they actually don't know. They don't have enough surveillance footage. They have him exiting the hostel, and then they have him again on a camera about 10 minutes later back at that Hilton Hotel area in front, and then surveillance camera right next to where the attack happened. It showed him pulling out the gun as soon as the victim walked by, shooting him in the back, and then shooting him several more times, killing him, and then staying outwardly calm and walking at a normal pace before he picks up the pace. And then other surveillance cameras showed him getting on a bicycle and riding north. So the surveillance cameras have been key to putting this all together. But they did not result in a facial recognition positive ID pop. So they ran his face. There's that one image of him from the hospital where you see his face, but because the angle was not head on, they couldn't determine the identity of that individual just by facial recognition alone. So while the technology has helped investigators, it wasn't a silver bullet immediately. And now we're 5 days later, and it was a person, a witness who saw him in the McDonald's that led to this questioning.
Well, and that figures into what we just got from one of our colleagues, Pat Milton, senior producer of the investigative unit for CBS News. You reported the McDonald's component to that, but I just want to go through for our viewers everything they're getting in real time. And the first part is what you've told us about. 2 law enforcement sources said that a person at that McDonald's restaurant called police after they saw a man who looked like the person of interest being sought by NYPD. So Pennsylvania police immediately got that tip. Now, the possible suspect, and they're saying possible suspect, is being held on an illegal gun charge while investigators work to confirm that he is the actual alleged gunman that killed UHC executive Brian Thompson. So that's interesting to report there, being held on a possible illegal gun charge. They also say, and this is also interesting, they'll be investigating through DNA evidence. There's a laptop computer and other evidence that has been gathered. So that DNA is all over those items. They'll be able to match that, hopefully, if this is their guy, to the DNA evidence you might remember that was collected at that Starbucks and at the hostel in New York. They say if the person of interest is confirmed as the suspect, he will not be immediately returned to New York, as there will be an extradition process. So let's really drill down on that. We want to ask you a little bit more on, is she still with us? Anna, let's drill down on that, the DNA evidence. This is all about matching the evidence in that backpack or on that laptop with what they collected in New York, is it not?
That's right. So they collected a bunch of DNA evidence. They had multiple items. They had a power bar wrapper, a water bottle that was discarded at the scene. There was also a cell phone that was discarded. Unclear if that belonged to the suspect. But he also purchased a coffee and threw out that cup in a trash bin right outside the Starbucks near where he carried out the crime. And so that coffee cup was also sent back to a crime lab in Queens for DNA testing. So all of that DNA testing has been underway. They also were collecting fingerprints. But that's really helpful now. That process kicks in now. If this is, in fact, the suspect, they will match his fingerprints to what was, and his DNA to what was recovered on those items collected at the Starbucks, dropped at the scene of the crime, and then also, of course, they scraped his hostel room. This can be tricky, though, when there are other people staying in the room. DNA can be partial, fingerprints can, if you don't have a full fingerprint, just partial, it can be challenging. But with all these different pieces of the puzzles, investigators are confident that they can pin down and make a case for one individual carrying this out.
And, you know, that news conference at NYPD headquarters is expected in about 20 minutes. We urge our viewers to stay tuned for that, because as soon as those people step to the podium, we'll have our cameras fired up and you'll be able to see that live. But you've been covering cases like this for years. The NYPD does not hold a news conference like this unless they have something very solid.
That's right. So we'll wait and see, but all signs are pointing to that. In particular, since we have so many clues that we've been gathering over the last 5 days that appear to match what was the person of interest that's being questioned, what he was carrying and what he had on him when he was apprehended by local police in Pennsylvania, Reed.
All right, fascinating case, and once again, we are waiting a 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time news conference at NYPD headquarters there. And always great to talk to you. Thank you so much for being with us every step of the way. This is going to be very fascinating. So let's go live now to CBS News correspondent Skylar Henry. He's following the latest developments out of Atlanta. So right off the top, Skylar, I have to have you tell our viewers why you chasing this story sent you to Atlanta.
Yeah. Well, to follow up on Anna's reporting there, we know that U.S. Marshals from the Regional Fugitive Task Force, along with other members of the New York Police Department, have been here in Atlanta combing through video evidence from Greyhound bus stations like this one here in the city, trying to see if there is any connection to when the suspect got on the bus and made their way to New York. We know that the bus he was on originated from the city, but law enforcement officials say that they are still trying to figure out at which point exactly he got on the bus, whether that's here in Atlanta or other multiple stops that it takes to get from here to New York City. Also, developments that law enforcement officials say that they are paying attention to is whether that suspect got on another bus to come back here to Atlanta. Based off of the developments that we are seeing out of Pennsylvania, we haven't necessarily seen any sort of sway in terms of momentum, in terms of law enforcement presence from here in Atlanta to up towards Pennsylvania. We haven't seen many here at this Greyhound station, but we have been through other areas of interest throughout the city to see if law enforcement officials have combed through any particular areas, houses, businesses, to see if there's any sort of surveillance that could potentially connect who they see in that surveillance video from New York here to the city. We know that there was some presence here on the ground over the weekend. Obviously, things moving along here, new developments over the course of the last 20, 30 minutes or so, but officials wanted to make sure that they cover all their bases to try to pinpoint exactly who this is.
And you've been speaking to officials. You know, I started my day like you did, thinking that maybe we'd have some news out of Atlanta. It's almost whiplash to see this huge development out of the state of Pennsylvania. Are you getting any sense of surprise from authorities that you're talking there in Atlanta?
Well, that's been the interesting thing all along, Reed. Officials here in the city, whether that's the Atlanta Police Department, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, FBI, all of those who may technically be a part of this investigation in terms of assistance, they've always said that New York, in terms of the NYPD, has been the lead investigative agency on this trail here. And so to see that it's been relatively quiet here today, not necessarily surprising, given the fact that they have sort of passed the baton, if you will, to the NYPD to allow them to take charge in this investigation. But to your point, a lot of the momentum that we thought that we would originally have seen here does not appear to be the case as of now. And obviously, to your point, things can sway, things can go as it relates to this investigation, given just the momentum and velocity with which these investigators are trying to find exactly where he might be. Again, those multiple stops along those Greyhound bus station routes, these multiple states, really this East Coast corridor, if you will, that we know that more than 80 law enforcement agencies have canvassed to try to pinpoint exactly where this suspect is. And given the fact that this has been really 5 days since this initial instance here, and the fact that this man could literally be anywhere. And so I think all of those things together really sort of just puts law enforcement really, in the seat of their pants, if you will, in terms of trying to keep up with this suspect. They have alluded to the fact that he does appear to be, sophisticated to some degree as it relates to how he's operated his weapon and the trail of clues that he's left behind. And so I think what we see out of Pennsylvania will absolutely be an incredible development. We'll see what happens in that press conference in a couple of minutes.
What a day from New York to Atlanta to Pennsylvania. CBS News covering this crime story from top to bottom, and we will continue that coverage today at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Skylar Henry, thank you so much for covering the Atlanta, Georgia angle of this story. All right, so also breaking right now, a jury found Daniel Penny not guilty for criminally negligent homicide. That's the lesser charge in the deadly chokehold death of Jordan Neely on that New York City subway. So last week, and we reported this here on CBS News 24/7, that jury was deadlocked on the more serious charge of manslaughter. CBS News New York's Alice Gaynor tells us the reaction in the courtroom to that verdict was, well, watch what she has to say.
Well, in the courtroom when that verdict was read, there was an extremely loud reaction. I can't remember another trial I've covered where there was such a reaction. Typically, the judge reminds people to keep things to themselves and stay quiet, but there was no such reminder. And when the foreperson was asked what the verdict was, she paused a moment and said, "Not guilty." Thunderous, loud applause. You had members of Jordan Neely's family very upset, also yelling out. Jordan Neely's father was asked to leave the courtroom. There was some swearing going on. One activist who has been outside demonstrating every morning was inside and yelled something at Penny like, "It's a small world, buddy." We saw Daniel Penny slightly turn his head where I saw a slight smile. Normally he stares straight forward and we can't see much of a reaction from him at all. His two defense attorneys hugged each other, smiling. They left the courtroom and we're told they left the courthouse pretty quickly. His attorneys and Daniel Penny not stopping to speak with cameras. We know a short time ago, Jordan Neely's family did stop and speak. They are very upset with this verdict. It came rather quickly this morning. You may remember on Friday, prosecutors moved to dismiss the top charge after the jury had been deadlocked on that first count, which was manslaughter in the second degree. So the judge granted it. That count was tossed out on Friday, and today they were to begin their deliberations anew this morning on the lesser charge of criminally negligent homicide. That, if convicted, was carrying a sentence of up to 4 years. But again, the jury in the trial of Daniel Penny voted to acquit him.
Well, New York DA Alvin Bragg released a statement on this case moments ago. He says the jury has now spoken and his office deeply respects the jury process and the verdict. CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson joins us now. Welcome, Jessica. It's nice to have you with us. Okay, so last week the jury said they were in a deadlock. For the lesser charge, it seemed the jury reached a decision pretty fast after the judge sent them back to the table. Is that surprising to you?
To be honest, it is a bit surprising in the sense that the fact that they deadlocked on the manslaughter charge, which is the more serious charge, which is harder for the prosecutors to prove, indicates that there was one person in that room, at least one person, who was ready to convict. Again, we don't know if it was 6-6, if it was 11-1, but then when they moved down to that lower charge of criminally negligent homicide, you would assume that that one person ready to convict on manslaughter would hold, and maybe there would be more people who would say, okay, for the lesser charge, we're comfortable with a conviction here. Obviously, that's not what happened, but am I surprised just looking at the willingness of at least one person to convict for the higher offense? Yes, I am somewhat surprised.
Right, it's a turnaround. Okay, so the family of Jordan Neely, who's the man who died at the hands of Penny, spoke after the announcement. We want to get your reaction, but let's first play that.
I just want to say I miss my son. My son didn't have to go through this. I didn't have to go through this either. It hurts. It really, really hurts. What are we going to do, people? What's going to happen to us now? I had enough of this. The system is rigged. Come on, people. Let's do something about this.
Here we stand once again in front of this unjust system. I stood here 10 years ago because they did not give justice to my son with the chokehold. I fought hard to get the anti-chokehold bill passed, which did pass. But it shouldn't only be for police officers, it should be for civilians also. No one deserves to be choked to death. No one. And you know, we're in that courtroom and people are cheering for the verdict. They made the loudest noise, the judge did nothing. But when his father spoke out, they put him out the courtroom. Is that justice? Or what?
So, highly charged emotions outside the courtroom. My question for you, with that amount of feeling behind this decision, do we know if the family will appeal or respond in any way in a legal sense?
Well, we know that they've already responded with a previously filed civil suit. And we do see this a lot of times where there are parallel tracks. There's a criminal case that's brought by the government. Obviously, the remedies are very different for a criminal case where the potential remedy is jail time versus a civil case where the remedy is monetary damages. But the family is moving forward with a civil case. It's obviously based on the same set of facts, but different causes of action, a lower burden of proof, and the possibility that they could receive not just monetary damages, but I think what's also important to them is a statement by jurors that there was some wrongdoing here. With respect to an appeal, I will say it's always possible, but you need grounds for an appeal, and the criminal justice system does tend to favor finality, particularly when it comes to jury verdicts.
Jessica Levinson, thank you so much for weighing in on this today. When we come back, CBS News 24/7 and our CBS partners in New York are getting ready to go live for that 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time news conference. The breaking news, a person of interest in police custody in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Information with that person seems to tie him to the murder of that healthcare CEO in New York several days ago. Does it? We'll see what police have to say when we come back. Welcome back to CBS News 24/7 and breaking news. We've been following that nationwide manhunt in the wake of the killing, the targeted killing of that UnitedHealthcare CEO in Manhattan. We are awaiting a 1:30 p.m. news conference from NYPD. Some major announcements expected there. For now, here's your headline. A person of interest in for questioning inside a police station in Altoona, Pennsylvania. CBS News 24/7 just got this update from police. We wanted to let you hear that.
Good afternoon. Today at 9:14 a.m., Altoona police officers were dispatched to a McDonald's restaurant for reports of a male matching the description of the UnitedHealthcare CEO murder suspect. Officers made contact with the male, who was subsequently arrested on unrelated charges. At this time, the Altoona Police Department is cooperating with local, state, and federal agencies. More information will be released later this evening.
Is a pretty quick statement right there from one of the leaders of that Altoona, Pennsylvania Police Department. But we can tell you that NYPD has been in contact with that law enforcement agency after that citizen called in the tip from a McDonald's saying, hey, the guy that's standing next to me in McDonald's looks a whole lot like the guy that I'm seeing on national television in the back of a cab at a youth hostel, in connection, or at least suspected connection, to the gunning down of that UnitedHealthcare CEO. From there, Altoona, Pennsylvania police quickly brought him in for questioning, and now we await to see what they found. What did he have with him? There's a lot more information yet to come, and in about 4 minutes, we expect and anticipate a news conference from NYPD headquarters. So stay with us for that. In the meantime, President-elect Donald Trump's picks to lead key positions make the rounds with lawmakers. The man tasked by Donald Trump to lead the Pentagon is, of course, one of them. We can tell you right now, Pete Hegseth is meeting with Republican Senator from Kansas, Roger Marshall. Our teams are outside Marshall's office, and as soon as we hear from either of them after that very key meeting, we will bring it to you. But first, let's bring in CBS News campaign reporter Shauna Mizell. She's live in West Palm Beach, Florida. Shauna, at any moment, we may need to cut to that news conference there in New York. But until then, let's have this conversation. Pete Hegseth says he is not backing down. Does his journey look a little cleaner this week?
Well, it certainly seems like it, because Pete Hegseth still has the support of President-elect Donald Trump, who nominated him for this position. We saw Donald Trump reaffirming that support actually in an interview with Meet the Press that just aired yesterday. And Hegseth on the Hill today actually told reporters that he was grateful to have the support of Trump, and he predicted that it will be a great week, citing all of those meetings that he has coming up this week with senators in a hope to secure their support.
All right, so as soon as we see what comes of those meetings, we'll bring that to our viewers. But we have to ask you about another name, one of the president-elect's picks, Kash Patel. He's been tapped to lead the FBI. He met with Senator Josh Ernst, Senator John Cornyn. They said the meetings went well. It's just Monday, but is there an indication that he is off to a good start in Congress?
I would certainly say it seems like Kash Patel is off to a good start. You had Senator Joni Ernst, who we actually met with today, come out and put out a tweet. I want to read that to you guys. She said, Kash Patel will create a much needed transparency at the FBI. He shares my passion for shaking up federal agencies, downsizing the DC bureaucracy, and having public servants work on behalf of the American people. So if that's any indication how it's going for him thus far, it certainly seems to be going in a positive way.
Got to shift now to Tulsi Gabbard, who is also meeting with lawmakers, and a white-hot spotlight on her because we know she has in the past traveled to Syria, sat down for a meeting with Bashar al-Assad. She's had statements about Putin, about Assad, that have really put her in the crosshairs of some really big controversies. Will those topics come up in her meetings with senators today?
If they weren't going to come up before, they certainly will now, because her past comments and actions have only been thrown further into the spotlight with the news over the weekend that the Assad regime was toppled and has fell down, that the Assad family has fled over to Russia. And so all of those past comments will certainly be in the spotlight, just given the news that we saw over the weekend.
All right. And what kind of margins do all of them, Patel, Tulsi Gabbard, the gentleman tapped to lead the Pentagon, what kind of leeway do they have by way of votes? It's pretty slim margins, especially where Pete Hegseth is concerned.
Yeah, because first they have to go through the committees before they even get to that final process. And so they've been meeting with members of those committees like Joni Ernst, who is a veteran herself and said she was a victim of sexual assault. Hegseth has those drinking allegations surrounding him, as well as his conduct about women. And you have Gabbard, who has those concerns about her comments in relationship with the Assad regime in Syria. And then you also have Kash Patel, and the controversy surrounding him is just that he's been a firebrand conservative figure, and they want to ensure that he would come in and operate the FBI, the DOJ, in a way that would not be politicizing anything further. And so they have to first get through those committees that would be responsible for pushing them through. So it's pretty slim margins. If there's one or two Republicans who are not on board, it just may not happen. And as we saw with Matt Gaetz, he just wasn't going to make the cut, and we saw him withdraw his nomination at that point, and he was ultimately replaced by Pam Bondi, the current Attorney General of Florida.
Well, and that is why you are well positioned there in West Palm Beach. Shauna, thank you so much for this conversation on CBS News 24/7. Now, while President Joe Biden heralds those who overthrew Syria's Bashar al-Assad regime as paving the way for a moment of opportunity, there are some impacts. Look at this. This is video to our monitors, and this shows citizens in Damascus waiting in long lines just to buy bread and gas. The BBC's Middle East correspondent Lina Sinjab files this report.
This is the second day after the toppling of Assad's power, and life is getting back to some sort of normality here in Damascus. We are in another important square in the city, because this is behind me is the central bank. This is one of the most important also buildings to be protected, and you can see in the distance the rebels are stretched at the bank trying to protect it. We've seen them in other locations too. The HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, have sent its forces to many government buildings so that to avoid the scenes of yesterday of looting and breaking through government building and maintain order. And in this square, if you look around, you can see that it's all civilians are, touring around the city. They feel safe about it. In the distance, we've seen some cafes have opened, and in other areas, we've seen where the market markets are, where the food shops are. Bakeries have opened, food shops have opened. So people are taking baby steps towards going back to normal life after receiving lots of assurances from the leader of the opposition yesterday, Ahmed al-Shara, known as Rolani, that they are going to provide safety, stability, and prosperity for a Syria that will include all Syrians.
Jumping the map now to New York, and you are seeing a packed press room there at NYPD headquarters. In just a moment, it is our understanding that the NYPD will have some major announcements in that nationwide manhunt after the targeted killing of a CEO of one of our nation's largest healthcare companies. CBS News 24/7 watching, as we know you are. We'll be right back. You're watching CBS News 24/7, and that breaking news of a person of interest inside an Altoona, Pennsylvania police department facing some questioning in that nationwide manhunt after the targeted killing of the CEO of UnitedHealthcare. Now, while we have our eyes on that police station in Pennsylvania, we also have our eyes on a podium inside City Hall in New York City. It is our understanding that at any minute we should be getting a major update on this nationwide manhunt following that murder that was caught on surveillance camera, following the getaway that was caught on surveillance camera, and following what looks to be a getaway out of New York City, out of the state of New York, and into other places elsewhere in the United States. An elaborate getaway scheme and an elaborate plan leading up to the gunning down of that UnitedHealthcare CEO. We know you have a lot of questions, so do we. Now, to put things into context, we were told 8 minutes ago this was supposed to start. Why has it not started yet? We do not know. But what we do know is that behind the scenes, NYPD is in conversation with the findings in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Want to back up as we look at that podium and let you know what happened this morning in Pennsylvania. Altoona, PA, somebody standing in a McDonald's, they look over to the left and they see somebody who they say looks a lot like the person of interest that has been put out on national television, put out on streaming broadcasts like our own, and put out on social media feeds all over planet Earth. They called in police. Police were quick to respond, and they were able to bring that person in for questioning. That set up a chain reaction of events that has led to this moment. And the speculation is that police have a feeling that they know a lot more about this case because of what they found with and on that person of interest in Altoona, Pennsylvania. So once again, we're looking at a live image of reporters gathered, ready to take notes and dispatch to their various organizations. Headlines to come out of New York City Hall, NYPD and the New York City mayor to hold a news conference on UnitedHealthcare CEO's murder. We'll watch that. And as we always say to you, it's not just something we say, it's something we promise. When we see it, you see it. Let's jump the map now to California, where deliberations continue in the trial against the man accused of killing Cash App founder Bob Lee. Nima Momeni's defense argued that their client, who you see walking into court right there, killed Bob Lee in self-defense. Now, jurors are back at it today after weighing 21 days of testimony, thousands of pieces of evidence. That jury has been in deliberation for days, which caused some to wonder if the jury isn't favoring the arguments of Momeni's attorneys. We do not know, but we are watching. We are on verdict watch now in the trial against Nima Momeni. Well, the woman appointed to fill the Senate seat of the late Senator Dianne Feinstein in California, giving up her seat earlier than expected to get Democratic Senator-elect Adam Schiff sworn in immediately. You're seeing LaFonza Butler there. Her early resignation now triggers sort of a chain of events. California Governor Gavin Newsom had to appoint Schiff weeks before he would have been sworn in after winning the election to fill that seat. Now, Schiff coming with some headlines, reporters asking him if he would welcome a preemptive pardon by President Joe Biden. All right, a special report in that New York case. Listen in.
Of San Francisco, first woman mayor of San Francisco.
This is a CBS News special report. I'm Lindsay Reiser. We're coming on the air because New York City officials are giving an update on the investigation into the shooting death of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Let's listen.
Was the victim of a senseless act of violence. Our officers have been working around the clock. Many of them did not go home to pursue this individual. It was crucial that we were able to remove him off the streets of America, and we were going to seek him out no matter where he was at the time. And so this is a strong person of interest. The police commissioner and chief of detectives will go over where we are right now in the investigation. He matches the description of the identification we've been looking for. He's also in possession of several items that we believe will connect him to this incident. How did we do it? Good old-fashioned police work. The chief of detectives and the police commissioner made the decision to release as much of a photo that we had at the time. We sent it across the country, and someone, a McDonald's employee, did something we ask every American to do. If you see something, say something, but most importantly, do something. And they did. And because of that, we believe we have a strong person of interest to deal with this case. I want to now turn it over to the police commissioner of the city of New York, Commissioner Tisch.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. Earlier this morning in Altoona, Pennsylvania, members of the Altoona Police Department arrested Luigi Mangione, a 26-year-old male, on firearms charges. At this time, he is believed to be our person of interest in the brazen targeted murder of Brian Thompson, CEO of UnitedHealthcare, last Wednesday in Midtown Manhattan. The suspect was in a McDonald's and was recognized by an employee who then called local police. Responding officers questioned the suspect, who was acting suspiciously and was carrying multiple fraudulent IDs as well as a U.S. passport. Upon further investigation, officers recovered a firearm on his person as well as a suppressor, both consistent with the weapon used in the murder. They also recovered clothing, including a mask consistent with those worn by our wanted individual. Also recovered was a fraudulent New Jersey ID, matching the ID our suspect used to check into his New York City hostel before the shooting incident. Additionally, officers recovered a handwritten document that speaks to both his motivation and mindset. NYPD detectives are en route to Pennsylvania as we seek to interview the subject further. This apprehension is thanks to the tireless work of the greatest detectives in the world, and of course, the strong relationships we have with our local law enforcement partners. On every level, local, state, and federal, we all serve the same public safety mission. And this case, which captured the attention of an entire nation, is another example of how connected we are and how important it is to work together, share information, and pursue every lead. For just over 5 days, our NYPD investigators combed through thousands of hours of video, followed up on hundreds of tips, and processed every bit of forensic evidence, DNA, fingerprints, IP addresses, and so much more to tighten the net. We deployed drones, canine units, and scuba divers. We leveraged the domain awareness system, Argus cameras, and conducted aviation canvasses. And our detectives also went door to door, interviewing potential witnesses and doing the good old-fashioned police work that our investigators are famous for. This combination of old-school detective work and new-age technology is what led to this result today. And we must also acknowledge the instrumental role the media and the public played in this case. The images that we shared with the public were spread far and wide, and the tips we received led to the recovery of crucial evidence. We should never underestimate the power of the public to be our eyes and our ears in these investigations. This is the third time in 3 weeks that a member of the public has seen something and said something and done something that led to a high-profile arrest. The triple stabbing homicide in Manhattan, the gunpoint robberies in Queens during which an NYPD officer was shot, and now this. Now, the case will continue through the criminal justice process. And while we are proud of today's accomplishment, we must, of course, remember that a family is in mourning. I want to again extend my sympathies to Brian's family, his co-workers, and all who knew him. Finally, I want to thank the women and men of the NYPD, especially our Detective Bureau personnel, with a strong assist from our intelligence analysts. We also thank the SAC of the FBI's Criminal Investigative Division, Leslie Rodriguez-Bekshies. And I want to commend the staff of the Manhattan DA's office, and especially DA Alvin Bragg. He has been working with us 24/7 on this case, and I am incredibly grateful for his partnership. I'll now pass it along to our great Chief of Detectives, Joe Kenny, who will provide additional information. Chief.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon. As the Commissioner stated earlier, a male was taken into custody today in Altoona, Pennsylvania this morning. He has been identified as Luigi Nicholas Mangione. He's a male, 26 years old. He was born and raised in Maryland. We know he has ties to San Francisco, California, and his last known address was Honolulu, Hawaii. He has no prior arrest history in New York. Members of the NYPD Detective Bureau are currently traveling to Pennsylvania with members of the Manhattan District Attorney's Office to interview this subject. This case was brought to a successful conclusion based on the coordinated effort between numerous NYPD units, including the Intelligence and Counterterrorism Bureau, our federal partners at the FBI, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, and, of course, members of the Altoona Police Department in Pennsylvania. On Thursday, one day after this crime was committed, the NYPD released a photo of the shooter in this case. This picture was obtained by the NYPD during one of their extensive video canvasses. We took that photograph and we asked for the public's help in identifying this subject, and the public responded. Hundreds of tips began to pour into our hotline. Each tip was investigated thoroughly, and we began to release additional photographs as they came into our possession. The NYPD provided these photos to numerous media outlets. Local, national, and international outlets released the photo via television, print, social media, and online content. Luckily, a citizen in Pennsylvania recognized our subject and called local law enforcement. Members of the Altoona Police Department responded to the call, and based on their investigation, they notified the NYPD. This investigation is still active and ongoing. Thank you very much.
First, and then we'll... Mark?
I had a couple questions about the document that he was found in possession with. Can you go a little bit more in depth about those motivations that you mentioned? Was that CEO specifically named in that document? Was there anything more about him wanting to go after others? And also in that document, was there any indication that explains us how the level of detail that he went into killing him? Like, is there anything?
Like I said, that document is currently in the possession of the Altoona Police Department as part of their investigation. But just from briefly speaking with them, we don't think that there's any specific threats to other people mentioned in that document. But it does seem that he has some ill will toward corporate America.
Over here, sir.
NJ?
Chief, was the suspect wearing a mask at the time he was spotted in the McDonald's? And also, criminal cases often have a linchpin. Can you point to a single linchpin that helped crack this case?
There's numerous linchpins in this case, in the fact that we've recovered an enormous amount of forensic evidence, an enormous amount of video, and once again, with your help and the public's help. So I really couldn't put it on one thing, but if I had to, it would be the release of that photograph from the media.
You said he had a passport on him. Do you believe he was trying to flee the country? And also, are you still looking for any evidence in Central Park in regards to the bike?
We had divers in the water yesterday. That came up negative results. The passport, we don't believe that he was planning on doing any traveling at this time. We don't think at this point in our investigation, we don't think he was trying to flee the country.
The person at the McDonald's, were they buying food? What were they doing at that exact moment?
He was an employee at the McDonald's.
Right. But what What was the suspect doing?
He was sitting there eating.
Will the suspect be brought back to New York and charged here, and when?
We're going to have to work that out with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office in Altoona, Pennsylvania. He's going to be facing gun charges there, and at some point we'll work out through extradition to bring him back to New York to face charges here, working with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office.
Anita from the New York Post. I was just hoping to get more details on the capture itself. Did he put up a fight? Did he say anything to cops? And we've also reported that he published online anti-health care industry rantings. Can you share with us some of the services that he posted on?
We're still working through his social media. We're going to do a complete scrub of that. Preliminarily, like I said, he seems that he has some ill will toward corporate America, but that will all come out as part of our investigation. We're not done here. We're still going to be putting this together. We're still going to be working very hard to bring this to a successful conclusion.
And the capture itself, did he put up a fight? Did he say anything to police?
I don't have that information.
Oh, sorry. Can you elaborate on how he got there, the path he took from Port Authority and on the George Washington Bridge to Altoona, PA? Same thing.
This just happened this morning. We'll be working, backtracking his steps from New York to Altoona, Pennsylvania.
I was going to ask if you knew anything, if he took a bus to Philadelphia first and then somehow got to Altoona. But
We're still working on that. We're still working through that.
Britain. Is there any indication that anybody else was helping him from the inside, as far as tracking the CEO's movements?
Once again, we're still working this investigation very hard. It's not at its conclusion yet. That could come out during our investigation, but as of right now, we have no indication that that took place.
Chief, did he have any weapons or anything like that with him when he was arrested?
He was in possession of a ghost gun that had the capability of firing a 9mm round and a suppressor.
Can you get into a little bit about the technical aspects of the investigation? I know you deployed an unprecedented amount of technology. You also activated the Sentry program through Intel. Can you talk about how that is going to play into actually building the case as far as cell phone and all of the other technical aspects of what you've done?
In this case, it really came down to technology was the use of drones in Central Park, and really comes down to the video canvas that we did. We used every source of video that we could collect, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours from hundreds of sources, and that helped bring this to where we are right now.
The gun is it believed to be the gun he used in the shooting? And there was some talk that it was a veterinarian type gun. Is that accurate?
No, as of right now, the information we're getting from Altoona is that the gun appears to be a ghost gun. May have been made on a 3D printer. The capability of firing a 9mm round, obviously that will come out during our ballistics testing.
Oliver?
Yeah, Oliver Barnes from the Financial Times. Do you have any indication how long this handwritten, is it a handwritten manifesto that you found on the suspect? And then also whether or not he put it online at all?
Don't know if it's online. As of right now, it's a handwritten 3-page document.
Chief, does he have ties to that area, and was he someone who you knew by name before his arrest?
We believe he may have attended college in Pennsylvania, but like I said earlier, he has ties to Maryland and California and Hawaii.
And you knew him by name before today? Was his name on your radar?
Excuse me?
Was his name on your radar? Was he someone who you had been looking into before his arrest?
No, we did not have his name prior to today.
Brent, okay. Does he have any prior arrests? I know there were none for New York City, but is there any prior arrests anywhere else in the country?
We have not come across any arrests in the country.
Chief, hi, how are you? On two things. On the ghost gun, is it something you're going to be looking into to see if he made it himself? And can he make that himself? Or would he have to buy the gun the way it was?
No, once again, that'll be part of our investigation as we follow up.
I mean, obviously he's going to face murder charges, but is there any chance that he could face any other charges because he was targeting the CEO and because of his writings and other things that we're now finding on him? Federal charges or
that determination will be made by Alvin Bragg.
Yes, what connections does he have in Pennsylvania that you know of, and are they in Altoona specifically?
We believe he attended college in Pennsylvania.
Does he know anybody in Pennsylvania?
Wouldn't be able to tell you that.
All right, we're going to take one more question on the shooting, Marla, and then we're going to go. You talk about the manifesto having said things against corporations, but specifically UnitedHealthcare, and do you believe that Mangione acted alone?
We believe at this point, our investigation is leaning toward he was acting alone. So, like I stated earlier, we're still working through the investigation. We're not stopping today. And as far as the manifesto, like I said, I don't have the complete details of that. It's in the possession of the Altoona Police Department.
We're going to shift to
Yep. Good job, Chief. Commissioner. Chief Mangione.
Welcome back, everybody. This is a CBS News special report, and we have been listening to a law enforcement update on a person of interest being questioned in the case of the death of the United CEO in the middle of Midtown Manhattan last week. I want to bring in Anna Schechter. She leads the CBS News crime beat, covering crime and public safety for CBS News and Stations. Anna, thank you so much for being here. I want to go through some of what police say he had on him, this person of interest. Luigi Mangione, 26-year-old male, a firearm and a suppressor on his person consistent with the weapon used in the murder, fraudulent New Jersey ID matching the ID that the suspect used to check into that New York City hostel, a handwritten document that speaks to a motive and mindset, and he was sitting there in the McDonald's eating. How do you square that behavior with someone who was on the run in such a high-profile case?
Well, I mean, he had to eat, and he was able to maintain his composure right after firing those shots off in cold blood. So it indicates that this is a person who was devoted to his cause. He wrote the words deny, depose, and delay on the bullet casings that were found at the scene of the crime. There was Monopoly money in the backpack that was recovered from Central Park that he dropped. And now this 3-page manifesto, all of this kind of speaks to a person who is motivated by an extreme ideology, and it all puts together a clearer picture of this person of interest and why he would do what he would do. That was the big question, why he would do it. The fact is that he actually did a lot right to cover his tracks, but not enough. Pulling that face mask down was his first mistake when he checked into that hostel.
A flirtatious moment with the clerk.
Exactly. That was a mistake. And then staying close by. I mean, Altoona, Pennsylvania is not that far away from New York City, but he was able to cover his tracks that it took 5 days for the NYPD to figure out which bus he might have taken to depart New York City. So that was a big question, and it was really a citizen tip that was called in that is why we're sitting here right now.
Somebody who was working at that McDonald's. Anna Schechter, thank you so much. I want to bring in CBS News law enforcement contributor Richard Esposito. He's a former NYPD deputy commissioner. Thank you so much for being here. What does it take to comb through the massive network of surveillance videos and photos, not only in New York City, but potentially bus stops along the route?